Iran has let the first non-Iranian ship through the Strait of Hormuz, and it seems the requirement was to pay in Chinese currency. And this is so fucking significant, because the hallmark of the American empire, at least for the past 50 years, has not just been incredible and brutal violence, but it has been the petrodollar. A deal primarily penned by Henry Kissinger, which required most of the oil in the world to be traded in the US dollar, which has a lot of really annoying, complicated macroeconomic consequences, but mainly maintains Americans' hegemonic control over oil and directly aligns America's interest with all things that happen with oil in the world. And this petrodollar is exactly one of the primary things that BRICS, right, Brazil, Russia, Iran, China, and South Africa, was founded to combat. To combat SWIFT, right, the massive payment system that goes through American currency, and the petrodollar. And now we are seeing one of the largest shifts towards it, because the Strait of Hormuz, which deals with something like 20 to 30% of the oil trade in the world, is at this current moment only open to people that recognize the death of the petrodollar. And that, likely above all other things, is the reason that Trump is asking for all of the European allies, or at least Trump's allies are telling him to ask all of the European allies to defend it. Because Europe, as a, effective vassal state of the American empire, though whose allegiances might be slowly shifting, is seen as an extension of the American empire and thus seen as a thing that should be protecting it. And the fact that they are really not coming to the defense of the Strait of Hormuz, in my opinion, firstly shows that they know this is a losing battle, but second of all shows that the American empire is dying, and this may well be seen as the death knell.
The physical disruption of oil is only half the strategy. The real kill shot, the dagger aimed straight at the heart of the American empire, is the currency. Iran is now openly pushing a strategy where global oil trade through the Strait of Hormuz can resume, but only if that cargo is traded in Chinese yuan, not in US dollars. Think about the magnitude of what Iran is proposing. Since the 1970s, the entire architecture of American global dominance has rested on the petrodollar. The global requirement that nations must buy oil in US dollars is what forces every country on earth to hold US currency, which in turn finances America's massive national debt and gives Washington the power to economically sanction anyone it chooses. The petrodollar is what allows the United States to run a military cost pyramid that is completely backwards. It is the magic money printer that funds the empire.
What happens to the world if Iran turns around and says, yeah, you guys can pass, but the only exception now is that you have to pay in yuan instead of the United States dollar? Remember that almost 20% of the world's oil passes through the Strait of Hormuz every single day. If you're living life with your head not up your ass, you realize that Iran controls the Strait of Hormuz. If Iran decides to wake up one day and say that, yeah, we want the yuan instead of the United States dollar, that would be a direct attack on the United States dollar, because the backbone of the United States economy is the petrodollar system. The US dollar used to be backed by gold, but we all know that Richard Nixon got rid of that a while ago. But ever since then, it's all been about oil. The idea to destabilize the petrodollar has been floated around for an extremely long time, but in simple terms, no one's had the balls to actually act on it. Because you need some type of geopolitical location to cause a choke point, and that's exactly what the Strait of Hormuz is. Any ship right now that passes through the Strait of Hormuz is at direct threat of getting hit by a missile. So yes, while the United States military is one of the strongest forces that this earth has ever seen, there's nothing they can do right now. Realistically, the only thing that they can do is put boots on the ground, but that would be a suicide mission. And the scary part about that entire situation is that Iran knows that, and they're going to use it against us.
Iran has now openly stepped into the field to severely damage the U.S. economy. As you know, for the past several days, Iran has taken complete control of the Strait of Hormuz. Iran has been targeting every oil tanker passing through this route, especially the ships that are allied with the United States or trade with it. But now suddenly something surprising has happened. Iran has once again reopened the Strait of Hormuz. But wait, why did this happen? In fact, Iran has played a move that could seriously challenge the power of the United States dollar. Iran announced that now only those oil tankers will be allowed allowed to pass through the Strait of Hormuz that conduct their trade in the Chinese currency. In other words, ships that trade in US dollars could be blocked from this route. This decision could become a major challenge for the US economy because for the past several decades, most of the global oil trade has been conducted in the United States dollar. Let me tell you that the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most important oil routes in the world. Around 20 million barrels of oil pass through this route every day. That means nearly 20% of the world's oil consumption reaches the global market through this single passage.
Hello everyone, welcome back. My name is Kola, and you know what's actually crazy right now? The whole situation with the Strait of Hormuz, it's starting to feel like one big power shift happening in real time. So now we are hearing that the strait might reopen or has been opened, but not for everyone. And the biggest shock is the US could actually be excluded in this. Like, imagine one of the most important oil routes in the world reopening, but the world's biggest economy is basically told not to. And then it gets even deeper. There's this Indian oil tanker situation where they are being allowed through, and but with conditions, and they have to pay in Chinese yuan and not US dollars. And that's huge. That's not just about oil anymore. That's about control. But before we dive in ahead, let's first watch how people are reacting to this, and then I'm going to come back with a full commentary at the end of the video.
I know it's payday today, and you're probably thinking about just hitting the store for the usual stuff, but you need to listen to me. We're nearly 3 weeks into the Strait of Hormuz being effectively shut down, and now the Red Sea is officially back to being a no-go zone. They're messing with another major shipping lane. If that happens, the global part of our world just stops. No more imports. Looking at $200 a barrel. Maybe even higher. Think about that. At $200, nobody can move. People won't be able to get their cars out of the driveway to get home. On March 11, the IEA announced the release of 400 million barrels of emergency reserves, their largest action in its 50-year history to try to stop the bleeding. For my people here in Louisiana, I know you think you are safe because we see the rigs and the refineries everywhere, but do not fall for that. Oil is a global market. Even if it's pumped in our backyard, we still have to pay the global price. If you want to see what's coming for us, look at California, Hawaii, Washington State. They rely the most on those foreign tankers. If they cannot reopen these lanes soon, it's game over for imports. Everything you see on the shelf right now is all there is. Once it is gone, we're looking at a total self-reliance. We will be eating whatever we can grow here, like sweet potatoes, eggs, but our local farms just are not ready to feed everyone yet. If you have a little extra money this weekend, focus on the essentials. Get canned tuna, black beans because they last forever. Get honey for calories, and do not forget the salt. You literally cannot live without it, and it will be the first thing to disappear. Too many people are sleepwalking through this crisis. Roughly 3,200 vessels, including old tankers, massive container ships, and even 6 cruise ships with 15,000 passengers are effectively stuck inside the Persian Gulf. An Indian sailor whose story went viral this week have reported that they are down to boiling seawater or non-potable tank water just to survive.
What is the fate of the petrodollar? A senior Iranian official told CNN that Tehran is considering allowing some vessels to pass through the Strait of Hormuz, with one caveat, that all transactions for cargo, that includes oil, are settled in Chinese yuan and not the US dollar. Such a move would circumvent the decades-old petrodollar used by oil exporting countries to settle transactions. The petrodollar is a major reason why the US dollar is the world's reserve currency and also helps maintain dominance of the United States by creating more demand for US dollars. The petrodollar system dates back to 1974, when Saudi Arabia agreed to sell its oil in US dollars, helping stabilize the US economy after the Vietnam War and the end of the gold standard. Sanctioned oil producers like Russia, Iran, and until recently Venezuela challenged the petrodollar, opting to use other currencies. Iran's effective closure of the Strait of Hormuz, that normally handles around 20% of global oil and gas supply, has caused what the International Energy Agency says the largest disruption in the history of global oil markets. If Tehran moves forward with this plan, it could further weaponize one of the world's most critical energy choke points, not only militarily, but also financially, experts say. It's caused energy prices worldwide to skyrocket, and we've even seen prices of things like fertilizer, jet fuel, and polymers increase. But a new risk has emerged. Could the world be moving towards a petro-yuan? De-dollarization has been debated for years, with President Trump warning BRICS, the coalition of emerging nations, against abandoning the US dollar. If Iran continues to keep a tight grip on the Strait of Hormuz, would countries consider switching to trading in Yuan, a currency of one of Iran's key allies? That could be consequential and could affect the fate of the petrodollar.
Opening the Strait of Hormuz is a simple military maneuver.
Very simple.
Yeah, but what did you mean by that?
It's a simple military maneuver. It's relatively safe, but you need a lot of help in the sense of you need ships, you need volume. And NATO could help us, but they so far haven't had the courage to do so. And others could help us, but, we don't use it. At a certain point, it'll open itself at a certain point. But we've defeated the enemy, and they are an enemy. They're a sick group of people. The leadership is gone, the Navy is gone, the Air Force is gone, the anti-aircraft equipment that they have, the radar they have is all gone, everything's gone. The strait itself, the actual strait, how are you? The strait itself is, we're doing a good job, but it would be nice if the countries, including China, if the countries that use it, China uses it 90% of their energy. Japan is 95% of the energy. It would be nice if those countries would get involved.
Is this the end of the petrodollar and American dominance and hegemony in the world? Who knows? The idiocy, the lack of foresight that Trump and his administration and the greedy oil barons that he serves and the industrial military complex has the tables churned on them. Will it work? Your guess is as good as mine. Anyways, what do you think about this? Will it work?
Any country on earth that wanted to buy oil has to buy it in American dollars. And so as a result, the dollar becomes America's greatest export. Our money is no longer backed by gold, it's backed by oil. So now what happens when a country tries to stop using this? So in 2000, Saddam Hussein switched Iraqi oil sales from dollars to euros. 3 years later, the United States invades Iraq. And one of the first things that America did after conquering Iraq was revert oil sales back to the US dollar. In 2009, Muammar Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed gold dinar for African energy trade. And 2 years later, in 2011, NATO intervened, Gaddafi is killed, and the gold dinar idea dies with him. Then Venezuela begins selling oil in yen. And in early 2026, the United States conducts a military operation, and spoiler alert, the U.S. government took control of the sale of oil, and Venezuelan oil is now sold in dollars and not in yen or other currencies. So, Iraq, Libya, Venezuela, and now Iran, 4 countries trying to move off of this petrodollar within, 26 years? Yeah, that's a lot of smoke on that one.
So I saw this article, this headline, and I wanted to give pause for a second because I really want you to think of what this is going to mean. Iran is considering letting oil tankers through the Strait of Hormuz only if they pay in Chinese yuan. China didn't start this war, and China's about to win. So let's talk about why that is problematic. Since the 70s, oil has been dominated by the US dollar. Everybody trades oil in US currency, USD. Now Iran's like, guess what? Hold my fucking beer. We're gonna probably let some boats go through, but only if you change the currency. That means that would weaken our fucking dollar to nada. And China, who is not in this war, would automatically win because boats going through would have to pay in Chinese yuan. Like if that global demand for the dollar falls, it means our borrowing rates would rise. It would mean we would have less dominance in the world because our dollar wouldn't be worth shit. But go a step further than that. What has Trump said fucking continuously through this second presidency? All about crypto, all about decentralized banks. So he knows that if they go through the Strait of Hormuz and they've got to trade in yuan and weaken the US dollar, he does not give a fuck. Why do you think he has money all over the world? Why do you think he started a crypto company? Why do you think that's happening? Because he's trying to decentralize the dollar and make it worth nothing. It would reduce power of US sanctions over oil. China's gonna gain leverage over the oil. The petrodollar system, she gone. And the kicker, military presence in the United States would be more prevalent because, as you know, our Navy kind of protects that. But if it's, it's no longer an issue because the US dollar, we would have more of a political stance in the military in the Strait of Hormuz. This is all intentional. 20% of the world's oil flows through there. 20%. And if it's no longer in the US dollar and it's in Chinese yuan, that gives them more leverage. From that article, this is what I want you to take away. If oil flowing through the Strait of Hormuz were mostly traded in Chinese yuan instead of the US dollar, the biggest change wouldn't be the oil itself. It would be who controls the financial plumbing of global energy. The shift would move from economic power from Washington to Beijing. Because we just took a whole bunch of fucking oil from Venezuela and that didn't seem to go anywhere except for Qatar bank accounts. He's playing fucking risk. And he's dumb at it. He's going to use our military forces against it. We're not being told all the information, and that's intentional. Our media's being suppressed. Weakening the US dollar as a fucking boomer who's about to cut earth is a dick move. And he knows it. He doesn't care how many of our sons and daughters die for it. Period.
Now, let's be real. Oil has always been tied to the dollar. And so the moment you start seeing deals in yuan, in Chinese yuan, that's not random. That's strategy. And meanwhile, Trump is out here saying he believes the Strait of Hormuz will just reopen by itself. Like no intervention, no pressure, but it will just open by itself. But at the same time, he's also calling on countries like Japan, Italy, Germany to step in and help secure things. And that's where it starts to feel a bit of contradictory, because if you really believe it's going to resolve itself, then why are you asking other countries to get involved? You can't say it will fix itself and then in the same breath still beg other countries to intervene and for them to come and help. And speaking of Japan, that's a big ask because a lot of these countries are already hesitant. They are watching this situation like this isn't really our war to fight and we shouldn't be involved. So now it's like the US is trying to rally support, but the rest of the world is moving cautiously or even shifting alliances quietly behind the scenes. And honestly, people online are already picking up on that. And a lot of reactions are like, this isn't just a temporary conflict anymore. This is starting to look like a long-term global reset. So now currencies are shifting from dollars to Chinese yuan. Countries are choosing sides without saying it out loud. And it's not loud, but it's happening everywhere. And if the Strait of Hormuz really does reopen without the US being fully in control, or worse, being sidelined, that's going to say a lot about where things are heading globally. And anyway, I don't know, maybe I'm reading too much into it, maybe I'm too invested into it, but something about this whole situation just feels different this time, right? Let me know what you think, because this one, it's bigger than it looks. Tell me if the Strait of Hormuz should be reopened for everyone's access, or did Iran do justice by excluding US to pass through the Strait of Hormuz? Tell me in the comments below. And finally, credit goes to all the respective owners of the clips and content used in my video. That's and Perceptive guys made today's work possible. And if you loved today's video and you would want to see more of this, ensure you leave a like, comment, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button.